How am I gonna make a video here? I need a gimmick. Huh. Screw it, I guess I'll just start with the Wikipedia intro. It's so easy. Resident Evil 7 is a 2017 video game for the Sony Interactive Entertainment PlayStation Funbox 4. Not again? Oh, that word choice, that is subtle. That's pretty funny. You know, this reminds me a lot of doing laundry in Japan. No, I mean for real, these little multi-hanger hook things, they gotta hang things out to dry over there because of some environmental protocol that means the dryers aren't as powerful as ours. So after running your dry cycle, you gotta augment it with hang drying out on the balcony. And we're supposed to be in Louisiana, but you don't see these things in the States. You just toss your socks in the dryer here and they're good. This is totally a Japanese laundry room in this American house. Which is why I think this game's such an interesting intersection of cultures and countries. It's a Japanese design but Westerner written take on a Japanese franchise trying a Western genre, so you got this mishmash of people writing both what they do and do not intimately know, and that beautiful mess is Resident Evil to a core. So like, I've been to this place a lot. I love Louisiana, and I've wanted to solve some spooky swamp mysteries since those Steamboat levels and Blood Money, so this is right up my alley, and those marsh flats, that's what it really looks like. Yep, that's a swamp, alright. Looks way shittier in VR, but hang on a minute. Looks way shittier in VR, but I've seen this kind of slime with my own eyes, and yep, that's a swamp. Hey, it's the fleur-de-lis. Nice, those things were everywhere. I never did find out why they call counties parishes, though. So Resident Evil 7 was made with a lot more Westerners on staff than in the previous ones, and they share experience in the horror genre. You got the same cinematographer from Alan Wake, the writer who did Fear, and on level design we got the all-star Jordan O'Maro. This white guy is in everything Japanese. He's like a chameleon. So yeah, whoever wrote this line has a far greater mastery of the English language than...
Stop it! Don't open that door!
But you know, guys, across all that ocean and across all these centuries of cultural isolation, maybe there's more we all have in common than what keeps us apart. Louisiana and Japan are the only two places I've been where everyone loves eating so much that even the gas station food is good. They got jambalaya, they got boudin, they got gumbo, they just leave them sitting under the heat lamps all day and somehow it's still delicious. So for as many problems as this game has, I love it. It's adorable. Its problems are so cute, because you got things like the Juggerment painting. Oh, the Juggerment painting. Don't look at me, I'm not Juggadiging. This is a 50-star flag, I think. It might be 48. In either case, the US should not have been using this flag until this soldier's uniform was way out of style. And if this is a Louisiana family, I doubt it's the Union flag that'd be on their Civil War memorabilia. It's very, very scary and all, but who in Louisiana owns a snow shovel? Yeah, American football. Nothing like playing a jolly round of the Queen's favorite footy. Am I right, fellow Yanks? This is all very appealing to me because it's probably the first time I've laughed both at and with a Resident Evil game. The first half of this video game is super freaking smart. Its reference game is ace, and you get this sense of combined pride, shame, and humor over the brand's own legacy. I can't believe they're still doing... There's gonna be a self-reference. Yep, there it is. Oh my god, this is gonna get dumb.
Fuck. That's special.
Oh. Are you serious? He's transforming again?
This is getting old, Jack.
Oh, okay. It goes through levels referencing, if not theming themselves off of homages of everything from Saw to 7 to weird Japanese bullshit I've never heard of, but the primary point of reference is Evil Dead, which is so close in tone to the very same Spencer manner that started the whole series off that homaging RE1 with those kinds of flavors for reference feels respectful. It's like this is a horror game for horror fans who want to test their horror trivia, because Resident Evil is just as much a recognizable name in the canon as the others. They know who they're ripping off. They're not fooling anybody, and that's part of the charm. It gets to the point where you literally enter a cheap electric fun house with red and blue key cards. This is so good. This is so freaking good. My god, the pacing in this game is sublime. So they split the team up into different departments, focusing on the different bosses who all share the same house and the same family with one another in a way that marries cohesion with personality to have the first half of this story play out as tight and concise as the original Metal Gear Solid. And it's all linked together with backtracking that creates a sense of place, which means you gotta call it Metroidvania level design. With long bouts of spooky quiet time, oftentimes with no enemies or hazards at all, that gradually escalate to loud, bombastic, frantic boss fights that dip right back down into the pitch black silence again right at the final blow. It's a roller coaster, it's a smooth curve of high and low tension. Oh, this is so good. So I'm doing it again on hard mode, and oh, it's still so good. Oh my god, they changed the item placements for hard mode.
They even changed the jump scares for hard mode!
But I mean, way early on in the second run, I got pretty stuck here. So the thing that finally got me through these hard mode boss fights was the block button, which, I'm sorry, it took me a while to suspend my disbelief into believing that my bare hands, which are my block button, can reduce the incoming damage of a chainsaw. I think it's important to note that I never really relied on that block during normal difficulty, but on hard I suddenly had to remember that button even existed, and I don't like it. The feedback is never convincing. It was always a trial and error process to figure out how to beat these guys. Most boss fights would devolve into me kiting AIs in circles and relying on this back and forth block and counter that always looks ridiculous. This low field of view, slow moving, hypersensitive first person shooter style sure does work great for exploring RE style, but it's the combat here that I was never really able to elegantly learn. Just sleep tight, friendo. No one has to get hurt here. Tack onto that the handicap of using a PS4 controller. That camera deliberately obscures the boss's windups and indirect attacks to the point where some fights had me getting stun-locked to death by stuff I couldn't even see. This is the sacrifice of going first person. Boss fights and combat for the series in general have always been obtuse in RE, but at least a few of the sequels had robust enough, controllable enough, and readable enough combat systems to function as high-score attacking arcade games. And that maximum skill ceiling of high-level play is something that I think is just not gonna be happening here with RE7. Though it probably helps to be aiming with the mouse instead of a stick, or with your face in virtual reality. That's something I wasn't expecting. Going from aiming with my face in virtual reality to aiming with an analog stick in rectangle reality felt like a real downgrade, despite how downgraded the PSVR mode's textures really are. Man, I am glad I saved my Resident Evil virginity for this mode. I waited over a year to play this because I wanted to wait for VR to get cheap. $200 whatever for the PSVR still isn't cheap, but it's cheaper than it was last year, so now I got to see all of this game's environments with a realistic sense of scale. Wow, this room looks real small. Wow, this room is real big. Wow, the monsters are like really kind of big. But what seals the superiority are your head movements, where you can more fully feel like a badass by peeking around corners, or more fully feel like a coward by peeking around corners. Unfortunately, the impressive immersion of VR works both ways. These Zaboomafus appear much more scarier when they're life-size, looking down from above your eye level, but the evil little Supergirl villain ironically looks a hell of a lot less scary when you can immediately size her up to your second favorite kicking foot. Oh, this is dumb. Oh, this is so dumb. Is this when the writing staff changed over to the other guys? Is this the language barrier? Who wrote all that awesome stuff in the beginning? Was that the Japanese guys or the Western guys?
Is there any weapons on this ship?
I don't know. Is there? It was Grandma all along. It was Grandma? Whose fault is that?
Some things were left straying off course, confused. Some members didn't respond to this well, and in Koshi's words, sometimes it was just utter chaos.
So someone missed the memo that industrial settings aren't very interesting, and that's so sad because the Baker estate was freaking charming. The whole first half of this game is charming. Even the giant goopy swamp monster that Jack turns into is charming in an old stop-motion movie sort of way. He even keeps his voice with that hillbilly twang. The ship, the single one room of a lab we get, and the caves, those places are not charming. Whereas the first half is making this cute homage to the American Gothic of RE1 that I fell in love with as a teen, the second half is going through the motions of sequels that I never really got sucked into. The ones with the metal corridors, the ones that are all about gun porn, the stupid plots that care way too much about explaining everything. And all of that is kind of antithetical to the entire horror genre, isn't it? Isn't the whole point of being scared is that suddenly you gotta face the unknown? Resident Evil has never really been keen about letting the unknown stay unknown.
There are unknowns here!
And this isn't a Japanese thing. Tons of Japanese horror games are more than content to leave the shenanigans at the hands of spooky ghosts and supernatural deities, and, well, most people would probably be content just facing their fears and reaching the end of any disgusting hellscape that is any good survival horror. Resident Evil games are instead paced as a psychological power fantasy. RE1 ends with a rocket launcher and a mushroom cloud. RE4 has the island chapter. RE5 has you engaging in straight-up gunfights with soldiers by the end. The power fantasy of the Resident Evil games has always been at odds with the rest of the survival horror genre, and that is specifically a Resident Evil thing. Or more specifically, a biohazard thing. The biohazard name implies that a pseudoscientific goop virus will have to show up sooner or later, usually to the tune of poorly localized production values and barely scribbled stories that have cemented the series' soul as straight up stupid. And I was so hopeful that number 7 wouldn't go down that path, but it's still kind of adorable. It's still cute. So, okay, if it was Grandma all along, and Grandma was like molding the Zardazes into shapes and willing them into and out of existence, then why was there a zombie in the morgue from, like, a corpse? Why do the bakers keep a log of the people they're trying to turn into zombies unless, I guess, both their recipes for making zombies are valid? Okay, yeah, whatever. So, okay, I guess the Baker family are supposed to be sympathetic victims who weren't crazy cannibal psycho killers before getting infected with the virus? I mean, Jack claims as much when you see their bio ghosts in the goop zone, but what's the deal with his diary entry from Jonas where he admits to being a killer as early as, like, whatever age he would need to be to fit inside his bed?
I'm no killer, son. Neither is Marguerite, nor my boy Lucas.
Pretty sure we got a confession proven otherwise, like a few hours back, buddy. This is real jarring, because on a second playthrough I noticed that they actually do foreshadow Lucas's bad seed hard, but then the final act retcons it all. So if Grandma, who's mind-melding into people's brains and having them hallucinate the form of a little girl in her place is just a hallucination, then how come she shows up in the VHS tapes? I'm sorry. I apologize. I'm not going to dwell on the plot holes of a Resident Evil game any further. I just got my hopes up, what with their goals of decreasing the connections to the rest of the series and trying to smarten itself up and lower the blockbuster budget. But it's somehow adorably campy that it can't escape its legacy. It begins so much stronger than it ends, and you can just hear the team arguing in all sorts of languages over all sorts of seniorities over how that ending should go. And I still don't hate it. What a beautiful mess of a game.
Boy, he's a weird guy, isn't he?
I'm Redfield. Lieutenant.